Samyate Bodhisvaha Gate Gate Paragate Parasamyate 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 Swaha.
Thank you, Maitreya. Good to see you. So being in the breath, always our best asset, being in the breath. I hope you can hear me fine. Is it good? Everybody else is so quiet. So I'm going to keep bringing us for this little piece this morning, keep bringing us back to awareness of the breath. Welcoming you all wherever you are today, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, united in the breath, bringing ourselves in full coherence. Feel your human form and your breath moving throughout your body. Good, and we'll speak the invocation in whatever language you speak it in. We invoke our guides and teachers of this lineage. We invoke the guides and teachers that have been with us throughout time, throughout this life. And we offer our great gratitude for the connection, for the guidance. Toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty. The only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of Guidance. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amen. Amen. I know this background is a little wild. It was the best I had. So entering into, again, our breath, and the suggestion is for the entire call as much as we can. We're being witness to our mind, witness present for our heart, and notice what arises. And do take Murshid Samuelos's advice. Do our best not to react. For myself, I'm feeling very tender this morning. I feel holding a very vast, a lot of feeling, a lot of people's feelings. And at the same time, feeling myself held by something much greater. I hope you can feel that too. So I just want to name some of the feelings that may be present now, maybe were present when you heard the news that Murshid Sadi was resigning from the Rouhaniyat. And I know that some people experienced a lot of disappointment, confusion, anger. So you might just want to get in touch with what was present for you then and what's present for you now. And we want to acknowledge that there are no bad feelings. We are human beings that have this great gift and sometimes a burden to be deeply feeling humans, to help us be alive in our being. So it's something we share, all these different emotions that arise and pass away. That's so fascinating. So again, check if you're in your breath. And let's feel the moon. Let's feel the moon in the heart and breathe into the heart. Feel the fullness of the heart, or if it's a dull feeling, whatever it is, notice. Just noticing if there's any anxiety and inviting ourselves to relax in this moment, be present in this moment. Be present in the love. Let the light fill this crescent moon heart. And then let's feel the sun in our hearts. And just as we felt the great receptivity of the moon, let's feel the radiance of the sun in our being, the strength, the confidence of the sun, shining indiscriminately on all beings everywhere. Sun and moon are we. So I'd like to introduce you to some people that you may or may not know. Of course, Pure Shabda Khan, present with us today. We'll hear from you in a little bit. And we're going to do our best to flash right on the people after I say their names. Abraham Sussman. There you are, Abraham. Thank you. Munira Elizabeth Reed. Thank you, Abraham. Thank you, Munira. Oh, I'm so delighted to be in this company. And Bryn Morgan. Thank you, Bryn. Kabir Stewart McKinnon. I always try to say something else. McKinnon. Oh, that's Kareem. There we go. Kabir Stewart. Thank you. So not currently on the board, but served so graciously and generously. Thank you. And retired in November. Happy to have you here helping. So these are our panel members that I just named. On the call also, of course, our support team, our support staff, Basira Beardsworth, my former next door neighbor, and Waduda Welsh. So Basira serves as our secretariat, Waduda as our treasurer. And now you're going to get to see the entirety of the Board of Trustees, Rashid Burskins. There you are. Thank you, beloved. So, Alima Quinones Prone. And of course, we have to name Kader Ali Dennis Prone, who served so beautifully also and made his exit last year. But we don't see her yet. Trying to find her. Alima or Alma Quinones. There you are. Thank you, beloved. And thank you for bringing your beloved everywhere you go. There he is, yes. Oh, gosh. Yes. Again, serve so generously. Pablo Iturralda in Ecuador. There you are. Thank you, Pablo. Subura Perry. You see what good company we're in. Here you are. Thank you, Subura. Guy Benintendi. Still Subura Perry. There we go. Feeling really grateful for our hosts. There you are. Thank you, Guy. Gayatri Kirikol. John Cordelia Prescott. All our volunteers on the board. Jelani Cordelia. And you notice your breath moving in your body, everyone, everyone, everyone. Giving thanks for this life, this being, this moment, this family. For this divine breath that we're being breathed by. Oh, Jelani, there you are. Thank you. Horace Wilson. And I'm on the board too. Thank you, Horace. That was a brief flash. And I really want to acknowledge Faranisa Lila Rosa. For so many years, she was a board member, and now she is a great servant of our board, taking notes, reminding us of meetings, taking all the notes to the meetings. Thank you so much for serving for so many years. Okay, so now I want to pass off to the moderator, the co-moderator of this meeting, but also the generous being, Kareem McIntyre, who sits with us at all our Board of Trustees meetings and chairs the meetings. Here he comes. There you are.
Thank you, Leila.
Oh.
Assalamu alaikum, my friends. Thank you so very, very much for taking the time today to join us, for being concerned about the Rahaniyat and its future, and for being our support and the energy behind us to push to be even better in this precious moment. Many of you don't know me, and I just want to, by way of introduction, just say I've, like so many of us, came to the Sangha through the dances in the 90s, and it's been a beautiful journey since then. The medium of my illumination, if you would, the work is as a facilitator and a process artist, and I work around the issues of conflict and social justice around food and farming and the way we feed ourselves. And about 3 years ago, I was blessed to be handed the responsibility for serving the board as facilitator by the peer, and taking over from my good friend and a tremendous friend of the Rahaniyat, Munir Peter Reynolds. Today, I'm going to be helping to hold our container. I'll also serve, as I serve the board, a little bit as a technical resource, just owing to the fact that I've spent 20 years as an executive director of nonprofits in California, which is occasionally useful in our work. But the key thing I'm going to be doing today is sort of keeping the flow going and moving from one of our sections to the next. And I want to start by passing the baton to our peer to share just a very brief welcome from his perspective. Shabda.
My dear family, my dear Rahaniyat family, extraordinary gratitude to our current board and all of our boards. And I've been serving on the Rahaniyat Board of Trustees for the past 23 years, first under Peer Moinuddin and then as the peer. As you can see, and my experience is that the board has been staffed by exemplary volunteers like you, offering their service to something they love and they cherish. Again, I want to offer all the people who've served on this board my sincere gratitude. There's no question that as a spiritual family, our main practice is loving kindness and compassion. It's quite clear that very, very few of us are experts in nonprofit law. I can proudly say our organization has successfully operated for 50 years as a nonprofit. And I'm certain that in each season, we as a board have made mistakes, and when discovered, done our best to correct them. And so I want to invoke today that our motivation is healing for our vast, for our varied and our beautiful family. I want to express that I'm very, very sorry, so sorry for all the pain and confusion that this period has caused our family. I want to offer my sincere apology to all the people I've hurt. I'm so happy we have this opportunity today. I applaud each of you for bringing your heart, and I applaud all of the board members who are here to serve us. And thank you so much, and look forward to this meeting. Amen.
Thank you, Peer Shabda. As we get into the day a little bit, I do want to let you know there's a couple more people that we'd like to introduce, just to let you know that they're supporting us. And in particular, I want to acknowledge and invite Rahima Teal and Alia Gallagher, who are our Zoom hosts, to spend just a quick second here and just explain a little bit about what we're doing with Zoom. And then also to let you know that Gayatri, who you met as a board member, is also going to be playing a very particular and specific role today around chat. And we'll just get all that unfolded. Rahima.
Bismillah. Welcome, everyone. For the first part of the meeting, the public chat will be turned off. It will be turned on later on for you to go ahead and ask questions, and Gayatri will be curating that information, and she'll talk about that in a moment. So just know that for this first part, if you chat, it'll come directly to me, and then later on in the meeting, we will announce when it's public for everyone. Also, as a reminder for the listening groups, if you would like to be in a group other than English, for instance, German, Spanish, or Russian, please add that to the end of your name. Also, if you've decided, or if you've already volunteered with Abraham to be a facilitator of one of those groups, please make sure that your name in Zoom reflects the name that I can find you underneath. If you have any problems technical, you can go ahead and chat with me. Thank you so much.
And Gayatri, anything you want to add at this point?
Just to say hello again so you can see my face for those of you who don't know me. I am going to be collecting any questions that come through in the chat. I imagine you may already have some, and I know, thank you to the many of you who sent us questions in advance. We're going to do our very best to answer everything, and if you have a question right now in mind, it may be answered in the panel presentations. But if not, when the chat is opened, you can just send it in there, and I'm going to be compiling, and we will have some live Q&A happening with those towards the end before the breakout rooms. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayatri, and thank you for your help. So why are we here? I think Murshida Leila and Pir Shabda have laid it out. It is to acknowledge and recognize the feelings that are in the moment. It is to express our sorrow and sadness about any harm that may have been caused, but it's also to give you information to enable you to see how we do things and to be as transparent as we know how to be about the Ruhaniyat. What we've designed the day around is just 5 simple little pieces. We'll give you just a little bit of an overview of what the Ruhaniyat is as an organization, because it's got some unique things that you may or may not know about. We'll look at the 4 areas of concern that Sadi brought to us around publishing, around fundraising letters, around fiscal transparency, and around our basic compliance with IRS law. And you'll hear from each one of our panel members about that. There'll be an opportunity at the end of the meeting to do kind of an open Q&A, and we'll be tracking, as Gayatri said, the questions throughout, trying to answer them to the best of our ability. We may not be able to get to everybody's questions today. Astaghfirullah, we'll do our best, but we do promise that we will answer all of your questions. So if you don't get an answer here in today's chat, we're promising that we will follow up with you directly and follow up with the community around questions and concerns that arise. In the end, our goal is to strengthen our community, our Sangha, and our ability to be of service, which is what brings the volunteers together on the board to do what they do. And I'm sure is what motivates all of us to be on today's call. So I'm going to talk for just a little bit more, and then you won't have to listen too much more to me, but I do want to share a little bit about the context of the Ruhaniyat, just so that everybody is on the same page. One of the first things to know is that the basic organizational structure for the Ruhaniyat, the bylaws, if you would, and the original Articles of Incorporation were actually prepared before Murshid Sam's passing in the 1970. But our formal incorporation occurred on August 2nd, 1971. And at that same time, we were also granted our IRS nonprofit determination. And one thing I think it's important for you to know is that we are a specific kind of nonprofit, which is a religious charitable nonprofit. And that means we've got some somewhat different rules that we operate on than other nonprofits that you might be familiar with. For example, non-religious charitable nonprofits do not file annual federal 990 tax returns. That's a fancy term, but if you were to go onto a website and look at Charity Navigator or one of the other sites that supports transparency in the way that nonprofits work, you wouldn't find financial reports for us or other church organizations because we're not obligated to make that filing. We are also acknowledged as a charitable organization in the state of California, which is where our principal location is. California, however, does have an annual filing requirement, and those California filing returns are public and are available to anyone. There are also other provisions of the way that taxing works in the United States system that is unique, particularly for compensation for clergy. And so later on, we'll talk a little bit about parsonage, which is a way of compensating our clergy or our senior teachers that has certain tax advantages for them. But they're essentially, it is an unusual and special case of American nonprofit law. So why are we here? Why does the Rohaniyat exist? And I want to just take a minute to read something from our bylaws. And I think these are really helpful. The Rohaniyat, the Sufi Rohaniyat International is dedicated to helping individuals unfold their highest spiritual purpose. And we do this in 4 ways: expressing and expanding through classes, lectures, publications, research, and other appropriate means, the religious wisdom to be found in the extensive works of Hazrat Inayat Khan, the teachings of Murshid Samuel L. Lewis, and of other Sufi mystics, as well as the writings and teachers of all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the spirit of guidance. So that's our first purpose. The second, to develop further the esoteric sciences by carrying out research and providing instruction in the teaching of authentic esoteric tools, methods of meditation, and mystical experience. 3, promoting religious education in theory and practice through arts, crafts, music, and dance. And 4, establishing other centers and purchasing real property for the purposes of this organization as stated above. So these are the things that as a board and as an organization, we are focused on. These are our charitable purposes. And as you can see, the things that we do, for example, publications, were named in our bylaws and are consistent with our charitable purpose. So it's important to know that because we come back to that as our guidepost. The other thing, I think there are 2 more things I want to share, and then we can break in and start to dig in. The first is the sort of structure of the Rohaniyat, and it was very intentionally designed to be what we would describe as a hub and spoke kind of organization, where the peer sits at the middle of the organization on the board and as the connector between all the different rays. And later on, we'll talk about what some of the implications are of having that hub and spoke model, which has great strengths and has some limits as well. In terms of the board, I think you'll notice that there are 13 board members right now, and all board members, they serve 3-year terms. And right now we have 5 members who are in their first term, meaning they've served less than 3 years. We have 3 who are serving in their second term, so they've served between up to 6 years, and 4 who are in their third term. So the board is a mix of people from across our geographic scope, from Europe, America, South America. There are a mix of age groups. And the goal is to try to have a board that reflects the diversity and nature of the Rohaniyat. The board meets every 2 months regularly, and then an in-person meeting during the Jamiat Khas. And it has 2 primary responsibilities. One is fiduciary, which is the responsibility for making sure that the donations that you entrust to us are being used for their charitable purpose. And the second is to ensure the organizational integrity, which is largely done through the process of approving an annual budget, which is our guidepost, our annual plan, and the way in which we measure ourselves throughout the course of the year. So as you listen to the panelists talk about the concerns that have been raised and the nature of the way that we operate, keep in mind these little tidbits, particularly that we're a religious nonprofit which has slightly different rules, and we have a hub and spoke orientation, and the board is focused completely on the whole question of how do we operate both in the spirit and the letter of the law, as well as to the higher responsibility that we have to the integrity of the message. So with that, I think I'd like to invite us to get ready to kind of dig in. As I said, we've broken this up into 4 areas. And the first area, I'm so grateful to have our brother Kabir here with us to talk a little bit about our fundraising letter and how fundraising works for us, and to address the concerns that have risen in this space. Kabir.
Thanks very much, Kareem, and Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The concerns that were raised by Sadi on this, let me just read them. Is it ethical and honest to mention the raise of the SRI that are not actually directly funded by SRI in its biannual request for donations? So I want to give you a bit of history on this, and I'm just going to put up on my reach out within the Rouhaniyat community and invite different people each time to be the messenger of this important communication. Because of course the Rouhaniyat depends entirely on a stream of donations from Murids and other friends in order to continue with this work. Now in 2011, Murshida Khadija had an inspiration saying that the Rouhaniyat had been around for roughly 40 years at that time. And as part of what she wanted to do, having been invited to give this message that year, she thought it would be useful to kind of compile a list of all of the various ways in which the Rouhaniyat is serving the community and the Sufi message. So with some help, she compiled a list. And of course, it's everything. It's all of the concentrations of the Rouhaniyat, like the Dervish Healing Order, for example. But there are also things like, well, the Murshid Circle and the Murids Emergency Fund and the Hope Project, all these various entities that may appear in some minds to be separate, but are drawn together in some way by the fact of them being part of our particular family. I want to just read you a little bit from that letter, because the letter is really, it gives the background that I think we need here. Here's what Murshida Khadija said that time. Grounded in our shared spiritual ideal, with the efforts of many and the grace of God, the projects at the left reflect some but not all of the ways in which our lineage extends its offerings into the world. Please take a moment to read the list. It's awe-inspiring. She goes on, considering that most of us didn't arrive on this path thinking of organizations, the accomplishments are substantial as our ideal finds expression in our lives and in service to the larger world. And then later on in her letter, she says, truth and divine wisdom are priceless. Spiritual organizations require funding to provide services. Over time, many Rouhaniyat projects have been indirectly or directly funded by Murid donations. The charts on the back reflect recent allocations. Feedback and questions are always welcome. And of course, the charts on the back would have been the charts for that particular year of how donations were being planned in the annual budget. So I've given you that background because that was kind of the origin of something that persisted for perhaps 7 more years, where the idea of including a complete list of all the ways in which the Ruhaniyat touches the family was seen to be a useful part of the annual donation letter request communication process. During that time, however, there was a tweak to it. First of all, the list started to become the rays of the Ruhaniyat. And second, there was wording added that suggested that your donation would strengthen these rays of the Ruhaniyat. And Murshid Sadi pointed out to us that this could be confusing and could be taken as literal. In other words, that any donation that came in would go to any of those areas, and that's not true. So on receiving that word, which actually was back in 2018, I believe, that letter was changed so that the list of these projects or these areas, these rays of the Ruhaniyat, is no longer a part of it. So in this particular concern, I think that what action has been taken, the best thing would be to say that the concern has been taken to heart and a different approach has been continued with. Now, before I turn this to my fellow panel members to see if there are any other things to add here, I would say that this communication need continues because in addition to ensuring a flow of donations from Marids who feel so inclined, it also remains an important objective of the Board of Trustees to reach out, especially to new Marids, and acquaint them with the myriad ways in which the Ruhaniyat serves the community. As Murshida's letter pointed out, when one takes bayat on the Sufi path, one hasn't read the website already or had any idea of these things. So there's an important communication piece that needs to take place to acquaint especially new Marids with the breadth and depth of the Ruhaniyat family. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about these things, and I'll pause there and just ask if any of my fellow panelists would like to chime in on this. Well, hearing none, then Kareem, perhaps we can move on this.
Thank you, Kabir. We're just opening up the chat so that you're able to start to feed in questions and begin the more interactive piece. Forgive us, there are 300 of us here, and so we're trying to find some way to make this interactive and get the questions answered to the best of our ability. So I think this is a good moment to turn to another area where significant concerns were raised by our brother Sadi, and it had to do with publishing. And our organization has sort of a long history of publishing, and I'm so happy that Munira Elizabeth Reed has agreed to step in and speak for us and explain a little bit about our publishing process and our contracts, and see if some of the concerns that Sadi raised can be addressed for you and the community. Munira.
I want to speak from my heart today about what this process has been for our board and where we are and where we're going. Starting with a context of why be in the publication business in the first place. And when Kareem read the mission of the Ruhaniyat, I think it's very clear that to help the spread of the message, how would we do that? There are many ways, with our voice, of course, and with our music and our dance, with our arts, but one of our biggest ways of spreading the message has been through materials that have come through our publications arm or through the Board of Trustees or through other gifted authors who on their own efforts and through their own resources have also published treasures that we support through the Ruhaniyat publications, and some which are not. If you go to the website and look at the Ruhaniyat store, there are 15 publications listed there. Not all of those are Ruhaniyat publications. They're published by other publishing houses and link you into Amazon. We've had a long history of having handouts, books, recordings, and now in this day and age of technology, we've moved into digital downloads as a predominant means for sharing our resources, making them available to the general public. I served on the Pubs Committee perhaps 1 or 2 years at one point in recent history. I don't come to this presentation to you as someone who has carried the bulk of the responsibility for pubs, but I carry that responsibility like all the board does as board members. I'm in a 3rd term here with the board, and in those 3 terms, there have been 4. We're in our 4th chair of the Pubs Committee. So as you can see, there's been quite a turnaround of people taking responsibility for that. Different reasons around each person's coming in and their need to depart. As a board, we're volunteers, and each of us has some degree of experience in some areas. Publications is not one that I would say many, if any, of our board has much professional touch into the life of publications. This is one of the areas where we as a board have to say we didn't practice best oversight of projects. That's the fact. We say with that, we're sorry, and we say with that, we're in a review of all of the publications. The newest incarnation of the Pubs Committee began with its first meeting in June of this year. So they have a lot on their plate to take a look at what was done in the past. Is there anything? Probably not about what occurred in the past, but yes, we can put due oversight in place, and we can put new templates for contracts in place that create a standardization and is something that we can all feel is something legal, ethical, does not derive excess benefit, or does not involve self-dealing. Those are very murky waters, we say, that we've been swimming in this. And in the pubs, there's 2 areas. One is about distribution, how do books sell and how do they get out in the world. And we've been happy that we found various and sundry ways and people who've given lots of time to help with our distribution process, which has undergone a lot of changes itself over the years. And then we have the process by which a vision, an inspiration, an author allows their book to come into form. And that's another aspect. Within books coming into form, we had questions raised by Sadi about A, is this legal? Are there legal contracts in place? And B, are those contracts ethical? Or I would call that, did they undergo due process in their coming into being? The answer about contracts. The contracts that we have on 2 of the 3 publications that Sadi raised questions about, and those 3 are Physicians of the Heart and Fatima's Touch, And then also he raised questions about the current project of the Murshid Sam Biography Project. 2 of those books have contracts, 1 of them does not. That's a problem with the board oversight. Are those contracts ethical? The lawyer on our board has reviewed them, and while our contracts are not, as Sadi charged, are they legal publishing contracts? These are, he charges that they are agreements, not contracts. While our lawyer has said they're not conventional publishing house contracts, they are legal agreements. Are those agreements with excess benefit or self-dealing? Again, murky waters. We do not at this point see exactly how that might have been. The current Pubs Committee has that as a concern, and they will be doing their level best to review it. But what we can say about it is, despite what has happened in the past, the current board, what action is being taken right now, the new Pubs Committee that has begun their work has a template that they're working with now to put in place for all future Pubs contracts, and also the due process, the oversight of a board of its publications, inshallah, shall be better. No one doubts the value of the publications that the Ruhaniyat has both produced, is producing, or the publications that we have promoted and sold and distributed of all the authors that we have within our community. We have a treasure trove, and they're more on their way. We're grateful that these resources exist to help broaden our knowledge and deepen our practice. We are not publishing experts, and we have made mistakes. And for that, we ask you your forgiveness, and appreciate that this light was shown on where we had a breakdown in our oversight. I feel like both the Pubs area as well as all of the board areas will be stronger and clearer from this work that we've been diving into as a result of the challenges that Sadi has offered to us. And with that, I'll do as Kabir did. If there's anyone else that would like to add a word, I'd be happy to hear, who may have had a longer tenure or on publications than I had. I know that there are, I have seen flashes that questions are coming in, and I know that Gayatri is compiling those, and as Kareem has said, we'll find a way to do response in those areas. Some of that will be heard, I'm sure, in the breakout groups, and if there's more that we can say in a town meeting now or later, we'll continue to work with this.
Thank you, Manira. So at this point, there's some great questions that are coming in. I think what we'd like to do is we'll take all of these questions, group them up, and answer them in our Q&A session that we'll do at the end, so just as a way to make sure that we get we can answer as many as we can. There's some really good ones that are coming up here, and some that I think we can answer fairly quickly. But we were mindful about how long we're going to be together on Zoom today. And we have got a real treat for you. A little bit of an energetic break before we continue to dive into 2 more areas of concern, and some beautiful music that we want to share with you. Leila, is there anything you want to add in here before we jump?
I'm looking forward to the little break and music from Malika.
So we'll take just shy of 5 minutes here. Just stretch out, return into your breath, enjoy the music, and we'll be right back. Thank you for that beauty, Malika.
Hari Om, thank you.
Hari Om, Hari Om. Let's keep going. I really want to thank you for your questions. They're beautiful, and I believe we may not be able to answer them all here, but I think all of them can be answered for us. And we'll get to as many of them as we can in the Q&A section. But we do want to make sure that we cover explicitly the two other areas of concern that Sadi raised for us. And one of them has to do with some of the things that are showing up in the Q&A, and has to do with fiscal transparency. And essentially, how do we do reporting, and how do we manage spending, and where does money go, and how does it work? And for that, we're so blessed to have our interim chief financial guide, elder brother, and good friend, Abraham Sussman, to share the board's perspective. Abraham.
I rather do sing or talk about money. But we serve in so many different ways, all of us, and that's the reality of our lives. Malika was invoking Shiva, and surely we are in a Shiva moment of transformation, and all of us being stretched and changed and purified and opened in this process, and in all the processes on the planet right now. So money is just one face of this tremendous alchemy and transformational process. The one of the questions that Sadi raised is where does our money go? What, how is it reported? Who sees what? And I want to say that the reporting of how our finances have been flowing has been very, very capably and I think powerfully handled by our treasurer, Waduda, which means the all-loving Welsh, and she has been pouring out reports and reports and reports and reports. And of course, if you don't read them, you probably won't learn anything about the Rohaniat's finances. But if you do read them, I think you will understand clearly how money is coming in and how money is going out. I am not focused on details today. My own training is as a psychologist and family therapist. I am here feeling the wound in our family, and really feeling it because everyone involved are my good friends. The question, where does our donation dollar go, is a good question, and a very, very appropriate question for us to be very open about. And in a very simple and kind of blunt way, I'll tell you, the great bulk of it goes to compensate our very hardworking staff. We are a volunteer organization, and many, many, many people serve the mission of the Rohaniat through volunteer work. And at the same time, we could not be growing the way we're growing and stretching and become international and become so diverse in so many ways if we did not have dedicated, hardworking, paid staff who have great skills. And I'll tell you that in my role as sort of overseer of our finances, one of my biggest grievances is that I don't feel that we have been adequately generous as an organization in how we compensate our very, very hardworking and dedicated staff. And I hope that as things unfold in the future, the generosity from our community will see the value of what is provided by our staff. And by our staff, I'm referring to our peer, our treasurer, our secretary, our esoteric director, and there's also the peer has a 1 day a week secretarial support. That's part of our staff. Now, it was raised in the concerns that Sadi has shared that we focus all of our money on administration. And I feel like that is a misnomer, and it's a misrepresentation of what our staff does. Our staff generate program. They generate and transmit the message through everything they do. There are some administrative tasks that the treasurer has to handle. We have to pay our taxes and this and that. But the great bulk, probably the entirety of what the peer does, and the great bulk of what the secretary does, and the most of what the treasurer does are programmatic. They are attuned to the mission of the Rahaniyat seeking to be some kind of a response to the cry of humanity, some kind of service to Dharma, some kind of genuine reflection of our ancestors, our silsila, and the guidance that is pouring into our family so that we may strive to be of some benefit to this very challenged world. So I'm very grateful to our staff. They work very hard. They are very minimally compensated in the big picture. Fortunately, on the board, we have had a great recognition of this. There's a whole new development of taking an HR committee very seriously. I have great gratitude to Sabura, to Waris, to others on the board who have, to Guy, who are really looking closely at how we can structure the relationship between the board and the staff in a respectful and considerate way and in a generous way, because generosity comes from the heart, and first and foremost, we are a family of the heart. And so if we don't approach the people who work on our behalf with heart, I think there's something wrong. I want to share that the whole organization is committed to the message itself, committed to the beautiful ideals that were named by Kareem at the beginning of this meeting, that we may, as a family, be of some service and benefit to humanity in what we do and in the teachings that have come through us. This is the nourishment. This is the food. This is the sweetness of what we hope pours out of the Ruhaniyat. Everyone loves a good meal, but what I've learned in my life is that to have a good meal, you really have to have a kitchen. You have to have a stove. You need a refrigerator and a spice rack and pots and pans. And I think of our organization as the kitchen. We're working in the kitchen to support the generation of a nourishing meal. And the workers in the kitchen work very, very hard with a lot of inspiration, a lot of courage. And so I want to say that's the bulk of the money that comes in goes to our staff. There are certainly some areas that money has flowed that have been of great benefit to the world. It was mentioned the publications that have generated, and they're beautiful publications. The whole archive project came from the creative application of money. Our whole technology and our website comes from money. Our commitment to helping young people have access to our programs and all the, quite generous scholarship support that the Ruhaniyat has provided for young people. This comes from your donation dollars also. Teachers in this family do not get paid. We are all volunteers. At the same time, many of our teachers lead workshops and retreats, and for that, we are paid. Teachers who participate in our Jamiat Khas training each year do receive a portion of the dana that is offered generously from the community, and that gets distributed transparently and openly. And that's a process that has been developing over many years, and I'm very proud that my good friend Sadi and I and a number of other people have worked hard to create a sense of openness and fairness in that process about how money comes in and out of the JK and how it gets distributed. So I feel very, very grateful to be part of a family that has such a high calling, such a profound mission, such a sincerity of dedication. I feel like there's integrity at every step of the way in how we do things, including acknowledging our mistakes, acknowledging our confusions, and doing better. I've always been an adherent to the Zen teaching, 7 times fall down, 8 times get up. And we fall down. It is human to fall down. It is absurd to think that in this human life we will not fall many times, because we are imperfect, we make mistakes, and we do fall down. And it is our spiritual assignment to get up, to rise up shining, open, engaged, listening. I am very, very appreciative of with what sincerity and integrity the board has listened to the concerns Sadi has raised. From my perspective, most of them were very valid, very legitimate, very insightful about how organizations work. And we are engaged very sincerely in doing the best we can in service to the message.
Thank you so much, Abraham. So important to hear.
Thank you, Leila.
So friends, we're going to keep moving along. I want to try to hold as much time as we can for your questions to be answered. And I just want to append one thing just as a quick reminder about the way things do work. The board does look at an annual budget that's prepared on its behalf by staff. That does determine where generosity might go to individual projects, Langar Fund or other things. And as is every nonprofit, as Abraham said, the majority of our funds do go to support our staff, including the peer. So with that, let's move ahead to the last point, and the question of, are we in compliance with nonprofit law? Are we taking into consideration all of the specific requirements that are implied in a nonprofit organization? And more importantly, as was mentioned by one of you in the chat, holding ourselves to the highest possible standards of ethics and authenticity. And with that, I want to ask our beloved sister Bryn Morgan to join us. Bryn.
Hello. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Abraham. I'm glad to follow you and echo so much of what you said at the end there. It's really my honor to serve on the board and to serve alongside such mega servants, some real Hanuman energy. So again, I'm Bryn. I'm coming to you from Portland, Oregon, and I've been on the board for just over 4 years now. I serve as the link between our youth council, this council of next generation voices from across the globe, and the board. I'm going to speak about compliance with nonprofit law, and I'm going to try to keep it simple and succinct, because if I were you on the other end of the Zoom, that's what I would need. like I said, I've been serving on the board for just over 4 years, and it is a constant learning process about the complexities of running a nonprofit organization. I've learned so much. And the complexities particular to religious nonprofit organizations, which Kareem has so beautifully been pointing us back to. This is a unique container, a unique form that we're operating within. So each of us on the board has the obligation, which is called fiduciary responsibility, to ensure that the Rouhaniat follows both the letter and the spirit of the law. So this is a refrain you've heard a few times over the course of our call. So we are committed to following both the letter and the spirit of the law, as well as our own higher standard of ethics and accountability. Obviously, we aren't just any old board of trustees. This is a board of Sufis. So ever since we heard the concerns that Saadi first raised, the board has been doubling down on exploring all of our financial, legal, human resources, policies, and actions, and making improvements everywhere we can. And you've heard some of my beloved fellow board members speaking to some of these points. I'm going to address a few specifics in the realm of compliance. So I don't think this has been stated as such, and I think this is a really important point. After we heard some of Saadi's concerns, we brought in an outside CPA, an outside accountant, and had them look at our contracts and our bookkeeping practices and our accounting structures. This CPA determined that we were and are operating within the letter and spirit of the law. That feels important. Independently, we looked at one of the unique aspects of being a religious nonprofit related to a point that Saadi has raised. So as a church of sorts, one of the ways we can compensate clergy is to reimburse them for their living expenses. And this is something called parsonage. So much to learn. So this parsonage reimbursement is non-taxable to the recipient, to the clergy who's receiving it. So it's a wonderful thing for a religious nonprofit to utilize when appropriate. So this is a little story time. Hopefully this will satisfy the thirst for some specifics. So about 5 years ago, the board incorrectly authorized parsonage payments, parsonage reimbursements for Wali Ali. To be clear, this was not an action taken based on the request of either Wali Ali or Shabda. This was a well-intentioned internal process of the board born out of our desire to provide support, non-taxable if possible, for our beloved teacher and the director of our esoteric school, Wali Ali. So well-intentioned, and it was a mistake. This is something we're so grateful to Shadi for, again, shining a light on. And as soon as he did, as soon as it was brought to our attention, Wali Ali's compensation was corrected back to the beginning of that year, which was 2019. And since then and today, his stipend is now reported as taxable income. One of the other key responsibilities the board has is to provide checks and balances on the Rouhaniat, on our organization, to be sure that we remain true to our mission, our charitable purpose. Kareem read through our very unique and special bylaws at the front of our call. And so you can see the Rouhaniat has a unique structure where the peer has veto power on any decision the board may make. And the peer selects, officially, technically, selects new members to the board and has the power to remove members of the board. These are bylaws that came into being in the days of Murshid Sam, way before my day, and before, Shabda became peer. They are bylaws that we have inherited, and we're working with what we've inherited. So that being said, I want to give you some insight on how this all works practically in the way that the board operates day to day. New members are recommended via group process. So, through suggestion, through conversation, sometimes friendly debate. And once the board feels settled, our peer Shabda will interview, check in with, and invite those potential new members. So the process is very collaborative. As Kareem mentioned earlier, we definitely strive to find a balance of geography, identity, and expertise, so we can, come together and serve the message in the best way possible. Decision-making on the board is similarly by consensus and collaboration, and very long conversations, and in days of COVID-19, often very long Zoom meetings. So yes, Sadi has identified our very unique structure as potentially challenging. We are right there with you, Sadi. I, as a board member, and all of our board members are super hyper conscious and aware of this dynamic, and we work on and with it every day. So this is not a dynamic that goes unspoken. It is right out front. And we continue to explore, this is our ongoing work, and started to explore well before Sadi raised this point, how we can best honor our lineage history, where we've come from, and continue to support the building of an organization that's both effective, that works, and also feels real and true in the present moment, real and true in 2020 and beyond, a structure that we can see ourselves in. So that's what I have to share. I thank you so much for your attention and for your care for this community. And I'm grateful to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bryn. Wow. I know many of the questions that have come in are asking for specifics, and I'd like to switch now and begin to address those. And I'll pass this off now to my sister Leila, who will help our board and panel field the questions from our beloved Sangha. Leila.
Yes, I've been seeing a lot of those questions coming in about the finances and the bylaws. So Gayatri, I'm going to turn to you now because you've been really holding the post for that. Thank you so much. And let's take on some questions.
Hello. Hello again. So first, I just wanted to make a note that there have been a number of specific questions about the financial reports, and those are available on our website, along with all of the bylaws, articles of incorporation, etc. Those links have been posted in the chat, and I believe were also sent along with specific documents attached in the email that was sent prior to this town hall for everyone to be able to review. And so if like some of the general questions that I'm seeing, if you have more specific questions after reviewing those, we're happy to address them, because again, this is an ongoing conversation with you, our beloved community and Sangha. This is, I feel very strongly as a new board member, really just joined at the beginning of this year, that to understand the workings of all of this and make sure that we really are doing everything as best as we can is part of it. But so if you have specific questions on those reports, please do feel free to review them and get in touch with us again later. So a few things, there's some kind of general theme.
Gayatri, I'd like to hop in for just a second if I could, this Waduda. Just to quickly, some of the questions that I saw, one was asking if they didn't see the balance sheet on the website. And honestly, that's just an oversight on my part. And we'll get a balance sheet for 2019 year end uploaded to the website. Previously, we have not posted the California 199 annual report. It's not a tax return. I'm happy to send it to you individually. You can just write to Wadud at Rouhaniat, or we can post it on the website either way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, good clarifications. We are constantly bettering ourselves and constantly making adjustments. Thank you, Wadud. So back to earlier in the call, the first kind of question that I want to bring in from the group, and I'm compiling a couple of different things, is about the raise of the Rouhaniat question. And just to clarify, that concern which was raised by Sadi first came in about 2 years ago in his original letter and list of concerns, and was since amended in the letters going out for fundraising, both email and physical letters. But the questions that I'm seeing are, how are decisions made as to which rays receive portions of donations or not? Since the esoteric ray receives funding for the esoteric leader, for example, why or how is it determined what funding is provided to other rays? All right, if Leila, or if there's anyone else who feels called to answer.
I see Abraham rocking. Do you want to offer something here, Abraham?
Question. Thank you for that question. It has been our feeling that the esoteric school is kind of the heart of the transmission stream, that what we, and I say that without the slightest bit of disrespect for the incredible value of all of the other rays, but the work with guides and murids, the curriculum of our esoteric studies has been a very central part of the history of our family life, and so it was not an active decision on the board's part. It's something that we've had in place for a very, very long time. Perhaps we should review it at this time and reconsider it. I think it's a fair question, but it hasn't been. It's the only ray that really does receive a budgetary support right now, and that's so. It's a good question to ask how that is, and I think we'll think about that more.
Actually, there are other things that get support from our general funds, including the youth. We dedicate money to the youth every year. Youth scholarships, 10,000 from our general fund is our current
That's not
budget.
a ray. That's different. It's not one of the rays in terms of the way the question was framed. I mean, we spend other money in a variety of ways, but of the rays, it's true that the esoteric school is the only ray that gets funded, and that's something to really think about. No, excuse me, Wadud, but yeah.
Okay, back to you, Gayatri.
Let's keep going at a little bit of a pace. See if we can get a few knocked out and really come straight forward.
I'm here. One other note just on that is to say that there was a question, if someone specifically makes a donation with a specific goal written on that donation, it does go to that goal. Nothing, it doesn't go through the general donations first and then is parceled out. If somebody makes a donation of $20 and says, I want this to go to the Hope Project, it goes to that destination. Moving on to I'm trying to just sort of cover generally what we have with the time that we have, and more specifics we will get to later on as well. A question regarding Saadi's departure. It seems clear that a lot of these questions were raised 2 years ago. Much of what has been said is that a lot was addressed specifically. Given that, why, in your opinion, was it necessary for him to resign? And what efforts were made to deal with this beforehand? And how come it wasn't able to be worked out to everyone's satisfaction?
Okay, panel members.
It's a great question. I'd like to jump in because I've been at the heart of these communications for the last 2 years. As to why Saadi resigned, you'll have to ask him. We can't speculate on why he resigned. I can say this. There has been considerable effort on the part of the board to communicate with him in good faith and in good communication. We've had many meetings and conversations and addressing the issues and keeping a conversation alive. And I will also say that I know that our peer has reached out numerous times to engage personally with Saadi to have some kind of a meeting of the hearts and healing to whatever wounds are in the atmosphere. And I know that the peer is pained that he's been rebuffed in those efforts. So beyond that, it's not really our place to speak to what Saadi's feeling at this time and why he took the action he took. That it's really for him to speak.
Okay. Anyone else, panel member? I would just say that we as human beings are very complex, and our decisions are usually multi-layered. And that's why we don't want to guess or project, just to be with his decision and support his decision, respect his decision. Gayatri?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, panel members. Was there anyone else who wanted to speak to that? Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Moving on to, there were a number of questions clarifying around the process of publishing agreements and contracts. And I'm wondering if anyone can very simply explain the issue that was raised, the concern around insider influence, and why publishing contracts specifically could potentially be problematic in that way. And then in addressing that, what is in place, what measures are in place for us to ensure that that isn't a problem?
I jump in here, and then Shabda's willing to speak to this, and I think he would be a good person. I see Wadida wanting to jump in.
Thank you.
I decided that I'd be at the helm since I spoke for publications, and I'm sorry I didn't refer to my notes more. I had specifically wanted to refer to the 3 publications that had come into question, and I didn't do them by name. I'm going to defer right now to Shabda because I think he may, and Wadida, that can speak to that history, or if there seems to be more questions, I can speak what I know, but I'm going to ask Shabda and Wadida to speak. And you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to at least allow you to see my point of view. The idea for a book on the names was direct guidance I received not the Board of Trustees. I wasn't hired by the Board of Trustees to write a book on the names. I gathered 2 other authors around me. This was completely my own project. Neither of them were part of the Rouhaniyat, except as extended family, Faisal Muqaddam and Imam Bilal. But we worked for 5 years on it. We transcribed everything. We had 1,000 pages of notes. At that point, Murshid Wali Ali, who I think is one of the great writers in our community, was so interested in what we were doing, and I had the inner guidance to ask him if he would become our editor and take the 1,000 pages of notes that we had created and turn it into a narrative from all of us. That took another 5 years. This, again, was not an expense of the Rouhaniyat. It was something we were doing. But I felt so grateful to the Rouhaniyat that my whole life dedicated to these practices, and that I received these practices. I wanted the Rouhaniyat to have the credit of having a book like this. I could have published it on my own in the sense and just kept the money for myself, not myself, but for the authors and so on. So we wanted to do was have the Rouhaniyat publications, or Sufi Rouhaniyat publications, on the binder, so that when people saw the book, they knew that it came out of the Rouhaniyat. So that was my motivation. Even though the Rouhaniyat didn't spend any money on making this book happen, I convinced the other authors that we should give 30% of the proceeds of whatever the book makes to the Rouhaniyat, so that it would receive something from the book. So I believe what was unusual is that we just wrote a simple contract, agreement, whatever you'd like to call it, that 30% of the net of whatever the sales of the book would go to the Rouhaniyat, 70% would go to the authors. And in fact, the proceeds of the book paid for all the work that goes into the accounting and so on. So there's never been any expense to the Rouhaniyat. So it isn't a typical publishing contract. And I was never compensated by the Rouhaniyat for my out-of-pocket expenses, but the sales of the book paid for the expenses for the book. And most of the money we received, we put back into the book so that it could be available in other languages. So we spent a good deal of money to print the book, to publish the book in German. The Spanish publication, I think will be out soon. It's already been translated, it's been edited, so we'll have it in Spanish. So even if it's unconventional, the motivation was always a sincere one. It has never been an expense to the Rouhaniyat. Going forward, it is not an expense to the Rouhaniyat. So if it wasn't done properly, it was done with good motivation. The second book that was brought into question is my wife's second book, Fatima's Touch. She wrote a book, most of you know, called Untold, A History of the Wives of Prophet Muhammad. We did have a publisher, and we found by having a publisher, she didn't own the book anymore. The publisher did. They weren't making wise moves with it. They translated into a language, didn't even get permission from her. It was very uncomfortable. So with her next book, we had the sense that we would just self-publish it. But again, we wanted to put the Rouhaniyat name on it so that there was a feeling that the Rouhaniyat was the fountain of this wisdom. So there's been no expense. There's nothing run through the books of the Rouhaniyat for Fatima's Touch. And in fact, the book came out right when Tamam had a very, very serious battle with lung disease, and now that's completely healed. But so she didn't get a chance to go around and even drum up sales as an author would do. So the book has been a financial loss, but a beautiful contribution to understanding the great power of women in our history. And so those are the two books that he brought into question. There's no contract for Fatima's Touch because nothing has ever run through the Rouhani, not one penny. And in fact, it's just our own expense, and we've suffered. If you've suffered, we've had a financial loss from that book. So I hope that gives you an explanation. The book, Murshid Sam's biography, I think I'll let Waduda speak to, but again, maybe 15, 20 years ago, when I first became a peer, I requested, Wali Ali, please, while you're alive, while you have the strength, write a biography on our teacher, Murshid Samuel Lewis. And at the time he said no, he didn't feel it. And after Physicians of the Heart was done, and he did such a brilliant job on doing that, in my feeling, then his wife called me and said, I think you should ask him again. He might be open. And I did call, and he said, I'll do it. And so we worked with him. We hired him as the writer of this. This is a Rouhaniyat project. I would hope, and I feel confident that through sales of the book, all expenses that we have spent will be covered. But even so, I think it's a wonderful and legitimate expense for the Rouhaniyat, for the future of humanity, to have a proper biography written by someone who was so close and such a wonderful writer. So I'll let Waduda take anything else. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that clarification, Shabda.
I mean, I see there's more questions about it. I mean,
Shabda,
those are going to be answered later. We're going to look at all the questions. We're
okay,
going to,
good. Yeah, I think I hope that gives you the overview, and there's always going to be detailed questions. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for this opportunity.
exactly. We want to maximize our time here together.
And Murshidullah, I think we may want to actually acknowledge that we can't get through more questions today. We're about 10 minutes over. Some people may need to go on to other things in their life. And we do have another opportunity for our beloveds to share concerns and for us to listen. And so I think it might be wise to make that pivot at this point.
Excellent. I'm not watching the clock, so thank you.
If so, then I think if there's anything that you'd like to do to close this phase of our time together before we go into listening circles, I certainly invite you to do that now.
Yeah, we're aware that some people may not stay for the listening circles. So that's why the reason for having some closure here. So I want to thank, I got a moment to scroll through and see everyone who's on the call and see the updated versions of how we're all looking now. And just really want to thank you all for having the capacity, the interest. I think we thrive on curiosity. We thrive on asking questions, and especially thrive if we can really do our deep listening of the potential of the answers. And let's recite a little bit together before we go into the listening circles, just briefly. So I'm going to choose Ya Jabbar. And Ya Jabbar, just to set everything in its place within ourselves, within the Rouhaniyat, and within our world, that whatever is broken be mended, and that we come away from focus on fractured existence and know our wholeness. We just really feel a place where we are whole and we are well, knowing we are loved. Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar,
Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar, Ya Jabbar. Let's hear a little bit about our listening circles. Amin, amin. So are we calling on Abraham for this? Are you going to say anything, Kareem?
I'll speak to it at this point. What we want to provide is an opportunity to really hear each other. There's so many feelings and issues that are stirred in all of us through the course of this day and the course of this month and year in relation to the Rouhaniyat and in relation to the issues of the day. And so the structure is going to be that we will, through the magic of Zoom and Rahima's magic, we will find ourselves in a breakout room of probably 6 to 8 people, maybe 10. There will be German-speaking, Russian-speaking, and Spanish-speaking groups. And the task in each group is to listen deeply to the feelings of what is arising for each person. There's to be no debate, discussion, analysis. It's not an analysis group. It's a listening group, a heart circle. Let's really hear from each other, hold each other with respect and care. There'll probably be about 15 minutes of this process, and then we'll come back together in one big circle to close the whole meeting. Aliye, is there anything you want to say about the technique of the forming the groups?
Yes, hello. So in a few
Thanks.
moments, Rahim is going to send us into the groups, and you'll get a little pop-up that says, would you like to enter this breakout room, and then accept that, and then you'll go into your listening groups.
Welcome back, friends. Let's just give a second for everyone to return. And then we'll just do a quick wrap up and next steps.
You have anything, Kareem? Or you want me to just?
Nope. It's up. I'd love for you to take it away.
Okay, thank you so much for all this today.
I believe everyone's back. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you for that, Rahima. So really wanting to, again, offer gratitude for your presence in our family and your presence here today. Also make an apology that this ended up happening at the same time as the Northwest Sufi camp, which we didn't know as we were trying to find all the board members' time availability. So I just feel I'd like to each one of us to just wrap ourselves up, if you know what I mean. Just, it's been a lot. It's a lot of information. And yeah, just bringing things to settle somehow within ourselves, no matter what the feelings are. And bring ourselves to a place of ending with a prayer khatum. Knowing that we live to be encouragers of one another. That we live to be on this path of love with as much excellence as we can bring to it. That mistakes are made and mistakes can be rectified and mistakes can be the greatest learning tool that we have. Here we go. O thou, who art the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty. Lord of heaven and earth, open our hearts that we may hear thy voice, which constantly comes from within. Disclose to us thy divine light, which is hidden in our souls, that we may know and understand life better. Most merciful and compassionate God, give us thy great goodness. Teach us thy loving forgiveness. Raise us above the distinctions and differences which divide. Send us the peace of thy divine Spirit, and unite us all in thy perfect being. Amen. And my ending prayer is that may our wisdom and compassion increase. May our wisdom and compassion increase. May our wisdom and compassion increase. Ooh. Thank you all. Thank you all.